My name is Amanda. I'm 47 years old, and until last month, I was the senior systems architect at Braverton Analytics, a data firm headquartered just outside Chicago. For 18 years, I was the invisible engine behind their most valuable asset. A custom-built, self-healing database system that processed $650 million in annual contracts. Logistics firms, federal procurement agencies, medical data companies, they all relied on it. On me. I wrote every line of the foundational code. I designed the entire security framework. I handled every major upgrade. When the system needed patching at 2 a.m., I didn't send someone. I logged in myself. So when my boss, Darren Price, summoned me to his office one rainy Thursday morning, I didn't expect to be ambushed. "Come in, Amanda," he said, smiling too much. That smile, polite, shallow, practiced. Something in my gut tightened. His son, Jordan, was already seated across from him. 23, maybe 24, with a sleek fade, designer hoodie, and that permanently smirking look Gen Z influencers have mastered. He was scrolling something on his Apple Watch. I sat. Darren folded his hands on the desk like a pastor delivering bad news gently. "We've been talking about the future of Braverton, Amanda," he began, "and we think it's time to modernize. Fresh blood, fresh ideas." I nodded slowly. "Okay, what does that mean?" He smiled wider. "Jordan just finished his master's in digital innovation. Top of his class. He's going to be joining the tech division, shadowing you for a while." I glanced at Jordan. He didn't look up. "Shadowing me?" I asked, careful not to let my voice crack. "For now," Darren said quickly. "Eventually, we'll transition him into a more strategic role. You've done amazing work, Amanda. You've built this place from the inside out, but we can't keep running on legacy systems. Jordan's got ideas about blockchain integration, full AI automation, machine-led project ops." I blinked. "We already run 3 active machine learning models. I built them." "Exactly," Darren said, as if that proved his point. "But the world is changing fast. You know how it is. Your methods are great, but they're, let's say, seasoned. Jordan represents the future." I nodded, lips pressed tight. "I'm sure he'll be a great fit." Darren beamed. Jordan still hadn't looked at me. I walked out of that office with a calm face and a boiling stomach. I'd been here since before Darren even bought the company outright. I remembered when Braverton had folding chairs and shared logins. I remembered the long weekends rebuilding systems after blackouts, doing emergency patchwork with a flashlight and an old ThinkPad. And now I was being seasoned out. That was the first crack. 2 days later, Jordan was given full admin credentials to the central system. Darren didn't even ask me first. He just sent a casual memo. "Let's get Jordan onboarded to the core framework so he can start learning architecture." Learning architecture. Like it was just instructions on a YouTube tutorial. I watched Jordan stumble through basic documentation. He didn't know the difference between a dynamic table and a static array. He once tried to rerun a backup script from a test environment. Live. Thankfully, I had installed invisible safeguards, protocols I'd written myself years ago after watching a junior dev accidentally wipe a sandbox server during onboarding. Jordan didn't know those safeguards were even there. Every day I watched the system I had spent 18 years perfecting be fumbled like a toy in the hands of someone who thought data migration meant dragging folders to Dropbox. Still, I smiled. I trained, I documented, but I also started watching the access logs. Jordan was logging in late at night, making changes he didn't understand, poking around in modules he wasn't cleared to modify. I knew what was happening, even before the words were said out loud. Last Friday, Darren stopped by my cubicle with a box in his hands. "Hey, Amanda, can we chat for a second?" I stood slowly. "Of course." We walked into conference room 3A. It was empty except for a small stack of papers on the table. "Let's sit," he said, still with that pastor's smile. I did. "This is hard," he began, "but we've made a decision. Effective immediately, Jordan will be stepping into the senior systems architect role. We'd like to transition you into a part-time consultancy. I kept my face still. I see. You've been incredible. Seriously, but the board wants forward motion and… I understand, I said. He relaxed. You do? I smiled gently. Absolutely. Jordan's got fresh ideas. He's the future. He exhaled, grateful. Thank you, Amanda. I stood, took the papers, shook his hand. Then I walked back to my desk, opened my laptop, and typed a single command. Not to destroy anything. Not yet. Just to awaken a system I'd quietly embedded into the architecture 5 years ago. A failsafe designed to protect Braverton's data from hostile intrusions, cyber attacks, or, in this case, reckless incompetence. It started a countdown, but I could stop it at any time. They had 7 days, and they didn't even know the clock had started ticking. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the faint hum of its rotation, thinking about every weekend I had ever given to Braverton Analytics, every birthday I'd missed, every time I skipped family dinners because a server was misfiring or a client API broke during a holiday sync. And now I was being replaced by a 23-year-old who didn't know how to ping a node without Googling it first. The failsafe I activated wasn't destructive by design. Not yet. It was defensive. Think of it like a sealed chamber with oxygen slowly draining. If you knew what you were doing, you could restore balance. But if you didn't, well, things would begin to collapse piece by piece. I checked the logs again that morning from my personal laptop. Access attempt 0314 AM. User, jpriceadmin, module/core/query/handlers. Status, blocked, insufficient clearance. He was trying to rewrite one of the query handlers that regulated client transaction summaries. He'd been warned in the documentation not to touch that section. It wasn't just code. It was logic. Logic that connected 143 subroutines, including billing triggers, compliance flags, and data reconciliation flows. Break it, and the whole house starts to tilt. But I didn't intervene. Let the system whisper its own warning first. At 9:41 AM, a Level 2 diagnostic alert was triggered. Nothing dramatic, just a subtle anomaly in the nightly reconciliation for a freight logistics client. The kind of error that wouldn't raise eyebrows to anyone who hadn't watched the platform for over a decade. But to me, it was the first domino. Later that morning, I walked into the kitchen to grab coffee. Jordan was there already, grinning at the new intern while tossing a stress ball in the air like he owned the place. Amanda, he said with a smirk. Hey, so I pushed some updates last night. Tried to clean up those handler functions. Make the code leaner. My pulse slowed. You mean the handlers in core/query? Yeah. He shrugged, sipping his oat milk latte. Honestly, looked like stuff from the Stone Age. No offense. None taken, I said, smiling. Did you remember to update the pointer references in the billing module? His face blanked. Pointer what? Never mind, I said, walking away. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Back at my desk, I saw the system had generated 2 new alerts. Minor delays in client report generation. A ripple effect. Subtle. Elegant. The failsafe wasn't just a panic button. It was an intelligence. It scanned user behaviors, tracked inconsistencies, monitored structural anomalies. If it identified sustained misuse or compromise, without my biometric override, it escalated. They had 6 days left. That afternoon, Darren called a company-wide meeting. A town hall, he called it, held in the second-floor atrium with its ridiculous neon Innovate Together sign buzzing overhead. He was proud, upbeat. This is an exciting time, he said into the mic. Amanda has done brilliant work for us, and now Jordan will build on that legacy and push us into the future. Jordan took the mic, full of TED Talk energy. We're exploring decentralized architecture, cloud-native solutions, and smarter automation. Legacy is great, but innovation is about letting go. Everyone clapped, except the engineering team. I saw Dan from DevOps glance at me, eyebrows raised. Priya from Data Security stared at her shoes. They knew. They just couldn't say it out loud. After the meeting, I got a Teams message from Dan. "You okay? This whole thing feels off." I typed back, "Don't worry. Everything is working exactly as designed." That night, Jordan attempted to run a batch overwrite to simplify data retrieval for a mobile client interface. Timestamp, 11:12 p.m. Result, error, recursive reference loop detected. System response, isolation of corrupt module, secondary systems rerouted. The system was defending itself, quietly walling off the mess he created without his knowledge. But now the errors were surfacing. By Thursday morning, client support was fielding calls about slowdowns. Darren forwarded me a message from an insurance client complaining about delays in claim audits. I replied calmly, "Looks like some system-level changes caused timing drift. I'm happy to consult if needed." He didn't respond. The countdown moved quietly into day 3. And still, they didn't know the system had started building its own walls. Firewalls, sandboxes, containment zones. What they were slowly doing was locking themselves out. By Friday, Jordan had tried 5 new improvements, all of which triggered silent lockdowns. The failover servers rerouted automatically, masking the chaos from most clients for now. But under the surface, the system was starting to isolate its core, like a body identifying infection. I sat in my office Friday afternoon and opened my laptop again. Accessed a hidden log directory I'd created 6 years ago. Status, containment active, integrity degrading. Countdown, 4 days. I closed the laptop slowly, looked out the window. It was raining again. A part of me hoped they'd see it, that someone would stop Jordan, that Darren would realize what he'd done. But the other part? The one that had spent 2 decades being overlooked, undervalued, replaced? That part was just waiting for the system to do what it was always built to do, protect itself, even if that meant burning everything down to do it. By Monday morning, the first real cracks had begun to show, not in the system, in them. A group of junior analysts from client support had flagged inconsistencies in 3 separate reports. Mismatched totals, duplicate timestamps, one record showing a negative transaction value, which should have been impossible. They sent the tickets to Jordan. He forwarded them to IT. IT escalated it to DevOps. DevOps sent it to me. Even though, officially, I wasn't part of the chain anymore. I opened the logs from my home terminal, sipping coffee in my kitchen while the sun climbed slowly through the clouds. The issues were minor, for now. Side effects of corrupted logic paths, triggered by Jordan's attempt to consolidate 4 distinct data layers into a single query string. It had saved milliseconds in speed, but at the cost of accuracy. In other words, he'd optimized the wrong thing. I sent a calm, concise report to IT. Recommend rollback of query 3AV3 to previous stable build. Logic conflicts with reconciliation subroutines could cause exponential data drift. No reply. At 10:04 a.m., Darren called. "Amanda," he said, trying to sound casual. "You have a second?" "Sure. You've seen the report issues, right?" "I have." "What do you think's going on?" "Best guess? Structural conflict, possibly due to a recent code change that didn't fully integrate with our legacy layers." Pause. "We're not calling it legacy anymore," he said, almost chuckling. "It's the new system now." I smiled, even though he couldn't see me. "Of course, the new system." Another pause. "Can you come in for a few hours today?" he asked. "Just take a look under the hood?" I hesitated. Not because I couldn't, but because I wanted him to sit with the reality a little longer, to feel the weight of what he'd chosen. But I said yes. Calmly, professionally. I wasn't done yet. I arrived just after noon. The front lobby felt colder somehow. The receptionist, a new girl who didn't know me, asked me to sign in. I walked past rows of sleek open-plan desks where engineers wore headphones and tapped out quick lines of code, oblivious to the slow avalanche building beneath their feet. Jordan wasn't at his desk. Darren was in meetings. I sat down at an empty workstation, opened my admin console, and dove in. The failsafe had completed its second stage, self-containment. Key modules had begun to operate in isolation. External queries were timing out, though the user interface still showed dummy results, a function I'd programmed in years ago to mask internal failures during high-traffic testing periods. Smoke and mirrors. I checked the countdown. 2 days, 18 hours, 42 minutes. That's when I noticed something else. Someone was trying to find it. Not the core system itself, but the hidden modules, the embedded security architecture, the legacy protocols. Someone had been running backdoor scans, querying architecture maps, tracing old admin logs. They were close. I ran a trace. IP 10.25.3.41, Workstation 21B, internal, executive level. I walked upstairs and saw exactly what I expected. Todd, the CTO, Darren's right hand for 7 years. A man who once told me, "We need more automation and fewer human bottlenecks." He'd been silent through all of this, but now it looked like he was finally asking the right questions. I watched him through the glass, his brows furrowed, a legal pad filled with notes, an open email thread with Jordan, and at the bottom of his screen, my name. He knew I'd built something. He just didn't know what. At 4:30, Jordan returned from whatever meeting he'd been in and walked straight to my desk. "How's it going?" he asked, leaning on the divider like we were friends. "Fine," I said. I isolated the drift. "You might want to double-check the way your handlers interact with our transactional filter layers." He nodded, pretending to understand. "Hey, I was thinking," he added, "we should probably just migrate everything to AWS. The cloud handles this stuff better, right?" I blinked. "You want to move the entire system to the cloud?" "You realize we handle sensitive federal and medical contracts? That would require a 12-month compliance audit and $12 million in infrastructure changes." He shrugged. "Yeah, but it's, more scalable." I said nothing. Just nodded slowly and returned to my screen. That evening, as I drove home, I passed the coffee shop where I'd written the very first lines of code for this system. Back when Braverton was just an idea on a napkin. Before the contracts. Before the money. Before the betrayal. And for the first time, I let myself feel it. The heartbreak. They hadn't just replaced me. They discarded me. All those years, all that loyalty, wiped away by a younger resume and a cheaper salary. They thought I was old code, but I was the foundation. And without me, nothing stood for long. That night, I checked the logs again. Attempted override detected. User, Todd Brennan. Status, blocked. Failsafe escalation, imminent. I leaned back in my chair. They had no idea. The final stage was about to begin. By Tuesday morning, they were officially panicking. The reports were wrong. Not broken. Worse. Convincing but flawed. Totals balanced, data looked polished, graphs generated correctly. But the numbers? They were fiction. A logistics client flagged a discrepancy in their freight billing data. Their reported payload didn't match the invoices. That triggered an internal audit. Then another client, a defense contractor, called about missing transaction logs. And by 10 a.m., I got a message. From Todd. "Amanda, we need to talk. Urgent." I didn't reply right away. Instead, I watched the log activity. He had been probing the system overnight again, trying to trace control permissions, hunting for a way to manually reset modules. But he was too late. The final stage of the failsafe had already begun. System status, Phase 3. Transition block. Data access. Partial containment override attempt. Logged, denied time remaining. 1 day, 6 hours, 17 minutes. I took my time driving in. Stopped for coffee. It was overcast, that heavy Midwest gray that makes buildings feel like tombstones. When I arrived at Braverton, the lobby was louder than usual. People talking in hushed tones, Managers walking briskly, techs on headsets. Something had shifted. The elevator ride to the 6th floor was silent. The hallway, lined with framed awards and plaques about innovation and integrity, felt almost ironic now. Todd met me at the door to the server room. "Amanda," he said. He looked pale. "We're having issues." I raised an eyebrow. "So I've heard." He opened the door, gestured me inside. Monitors lined the walls, most of them showing status screens filled with red. A massive wall map of client locations flickered with error pings. "We're losing control of the system," Todd admitted. I didn't speak, just waited. He continued, "We've tried rolling back the latest changes. No effect. The backups aren't syncing. Mirror servers are showing corruption flags. It's like it's defending itself." He didn't say it out loud, but I could tell he was starting to understand. "I found references," he added, "to something called LPR7? I nodded slowly. "Legacy Protocol Redundancy, version 7. "You wrote that?" I did. In 2016, during the ransomware surge. It was designed to prevent unauthorized structural changes under elevated threat conditions. "Is that what's happening now?" I looked at him carefully. "From the system's perspective?" "Yes. Someone's trying to take over without proper credentials, without sufficient understanding of the architecture." Todd exhaled. "Okay, so we disable it." "You can't." "What do you mean?" "It's biometric triggered. The system recognizes one authorized override signature. Mine." Todd's jaw flexed. "So you can stop it." I nodded. "Yes, I could." He didn't ask why I hadn't. He already knew. At that moment, the server room door opened. Jordan stormed in. "Are you seriously wasting time talking to her?" he barked. "We should be wiping everything and starting over." Todd didn't answer. He just looked at me. Jordan turned to me directly. "This is sabotage. You did this." I kept my voice even. "You did this. You pushed changes you didn't understand, broke structures you never learned, triggered a protocol you didn't even know existed." "I have a master's degree," he snapped, "and I have 18 years of experience keeping this system from collapsing." His eyes narrowed. "Then fix it." I looked at him. Really looked. Entitled, arrogant, convinced that his credentials were more valuable than wisdom. He didn't see me as a person, just an obstacle. "No," I said softly. "I think it's time you try running the system you wanted so badly." I left the server room. Todd didn't follow. Back at my desk, I logged in and checked the diagnostics again. Client alert volume. 6 times normal regulatory alerts triggered. 3 live transaction systems. Unstable time remaining, 29 hours, 12 minutes. Emails were flooding in. Subject lines like, "Urgent, missing reconciliation report." Error, "Cannot access back-end reporting tools." "Amanda, please advise ASAP." But I didn't respond, because for years I was the safety net, and they had decided I wasn't worth keeping. At 3 p.m., Darren finally called. "Amanda," he began, "I know you're upset, but we really need your help." I waited. "This thing Jordan started, it's gone too far. The board is breathing down my neck. We're losing clients by the hour. You built this system. Just tell me what we need to do." I stayed silent for a few seconds. Then, "You made your decision." "I didn't know," he said, voice cracking slightly. "I didn't realize how complex everything was." "No," I said. "You didn't care." A long silence followed. Then, quietly, "Are we going to lose everything?" I closed my eyes, thought about the long nights, the loyalty, the trust I'd given for free. Then I said, "That's up to the system now." I hung up. Tomorrow, at 5 p.m., the countdown would end. And whatever remained, or didn't, would speak for itself. By Wednesday morning, Braverton Analytics was on fire. Not literally, but close enough. The parking lot was already half full by 6:45 a.m. Executives who normally strolled in past 9 now sprinting across wet pavement with phones pressed to their ears. The building had the air of a sinking ship, full of people trying to find dry land before the final plunge. I sat in my car across the street, engine off, watching it unfold like an old film. The same building I'd entered every day for 18 years. The same front desk I'd once repaired after the badge system glitched. The same corner window where I watched storms roll in over the lake. Now, the system inside that building was eating itself alive. At 7:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Priya in data compliance. Amanda, do you know what's happening? All regulatory reporting files are corrupt. Jordan says it's a bug, but this doesn't feel like a bug. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I opened my laptop. System status, Phase 4. Defensive lockdown active access attempts, past 6 hours. 317 admin override attempts, 19 all block time. Remaining 9 hours, 48 minutes, Jordan had been trying everything. Command line overrides, system restore tools, a botched attempt at reverse engineering the biometric handshake protocol. The logs told a clear story. Desperation without understanding. He had removed my name from the admin access list. What he didn't realize was that the failsafe didn't rely on user credentials. It recognized my fingerprint. The one scanned every morning for years on that server room panel. That scan was my silent bond with the system. My presence had always been the signal that everything was safe. Now that signal was gone. And the system was preparing for its final act. At 10:21 a.m., Braverton's largest client, Crestwell Logistics, formally terminated their contract. Their live dashboard had shown them the same shipment 6 times in a row with altered timestamps. A compliance red flag. They reported Braverton to the Department of Transportation's Digital Security Division within 30 minutes. By 11 o'clock, 3 more clients followed suit. At 11:36, I got the call. Not from Darren, from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. Amanda. A voice said quietly, "It's David Winthrop. I'm a partner at Red Elm Capital. We hold an equity stake in Braverton." I said nothing, just listened. "I understand you're no longer employed there, but we're being told that you're the only one who can help us." I took a deep breath. "With respect, Mr. Winthrop, that's not my responsibility anymore." He hesitated. "We know what they did, and we understand the gravity of what's unfolding, but we're willing to make it right. Compensation, equity, a seat at the table." I almost laughed. After everything, the betrayal, the replacement, the arrogance, now they wanted to buy back what they'd thrown away for free, but it was too late. They hadn't just lost a system. They'd lost trust, integrity, respect. I didn't reply. I simply ended the call and closed my laptop. At 1 p.m., I walked into the building for the last time. No badge needed. The system no longer locked me out. It just didn't respond. The biometric scanner at the server room was dark, already disengaged from core power. Inside, chaos buzzed like electricity. Every screen blinked with errors. Servers flashed amber. Backup drives spun without syncing. On the master terminal, a countdown clock glowed in bold red. Time remaining, 3 hours, 57 minutes. Todd stood nearby, staring at the screen like it might change if he willed it hard enough. "You did this," he said when he saw me. I didn't deny it. But I didn't admit it either. Because the truth was, they did this. Every line of faulty code, every ignored warning, every arrogant decision built the staircase to this moment. "I designed the system to protect itself," I said. "If you'd left it alone, it would have kept running." "Then stop it," he said. "You're the only one who can." I looked at him, and I thought about every time I'd been passed over, every meeting where my voice had been ignored, every moment where I carried the company in silence, unseen. And how in the end they didn't fail because of what I did. They failed because of who they became. "I'm not your employee," I said. I'm just legacy code. He opened his mouth, but I was already walking away. As I reached the door, I glanced back one last time. On the screen, the countdown continued. 3:55:12, 3:55:11, 3:55:10. And still, no one knew how to stop it, because the only person who ever did had already let go. I was home by 4:30 p.m. I didn't rush. There was nothing left to rush for. I made tea, sat on the back porch, and listened to the hum of cicadas rising with the early summer heat. The same porch where I'd spent weekends fixing code that no one else could understand. The same porch where I missed birthday parties and cookouts because the system needed me. And now? Now the system was about to speak for itself. I opened my laptop one last time. Failsafe protocol. Active final lockdown. Engage time remaining 00:29:43. At Braverton, I imagined the scene. Executives scrambling, IT teams shouting across conference tables, interns tasked with printing emergency reports that wouldn't generate. Somewhere Jordan would be pacing, trying to make calls that went to voicemail. Darren would be sweating through his shirt, whispering promises to investors over shaky Zoom calls. And Todd? He would be staring at a command prompt, hoping the blinking cursor would give him a miracle. But there would be none. Because the system wasn't crashing. It was protecting itself. The final stage wasn't dramatic. There were no explosions, no corrupted graphics, just a sequence of surgical actions executed by a protocol I'd written during a stormy weekend in 2016 after a government agency warned us about zero-day vulnerabilities. It was called Total Data Integrity Protocol. The rule was simple. If authentication fails and control is compromised beyond repair, initiate a zero retention purge. In human terms, wipe everything. Why? Because some data is too sensitive, too valuable to be left in the hands of the wrong people. If you can't protect it, you don't deserve it. At 5 p.m., the system checked for biometric confirmation. There was none. At 5:00:30, it began to purge. 3 backup servers simultaneously triggered failover loops that led to decoy modules, empty shells designed to mask the deletion in progress. Encryption keys self-erased. Storage paths were overwritten. Even cloud-based mirrors, long thought inaccessible, received the command through a time-locked function embedded 6 layers deep in the architecture. By 5:02, it was done. The platform was silent. Not broken. Gone. All $650 million worth of client data. Transaction records, internal processes, system blueprints, user logs, historical archives, every bit of it, dust in the wind. At 5:17 p.m., my phone rang. Darren. I let it buzz 3 times before I picked up. Amanda, he said. His voice was hoarse. We lost everything. I didn't say anything. Every client file is corrupted. The backups are dead. Even the cold storage offsite is unreadable. I sipped my tea. I know this was you, he added. I don't know how, but I know. I finally spoke. You don't need to know how. You just need to understand why. He was quiet. You replaced experience with entitlement, I continued. You traded trust for trendiness. And now you've learned what happens when you build a skyscraper on unstable ground. You've destroyed the company, he said bitterly. No, I replied. You did that the day you decided I was disposable. Silence again. Then, what do you want? That part actually made me laugh. Nothing, I said. I already have what I want. I ended the call. By Thursday morning, the headlines were everywhere. Braverton Analytics suffers unprecedented data failure. $650 million collapse linked to internal system catastrophe. Federal regulators investigate total data loss at tech firm. Their top clients. Gone. Lawsuits pending. Investors fleeing. The board? Silent. That same afternoon, a private cybersecurity firm released an anonymous analysis suggesting the failure was not due to external attack, but likely the result of internal system protection protocols triggered by mismanagement and unauthorized access. Nobody said my name, but people in the industry, they knew. I wasn't a ghost anymore. The following week, I got a message on LinkedIn from a recruiter at Vallon Ridge Capital, a firm I'd once dreamed of working for when I was 29, back when I still thought talent was enough. They didn't ask for a resume. They asked for a start date. I started at Vallon Ridge 1 month later. Triple salary, full relocation, remote flexibility. At onboarding, the CTO shook my hand and said, "We don't want a fresh face. We want someone who's been through fire and came out holding the blueprint." I smiled. Because I had. On my last day at Braverton, nobody said goodbye. But I didn't need a send-off. The system had already delivered the message for me. And somewhere, deep in an empty server rack in a shuttered office in Chicago, a tiny green light still blinked. Not with error, with closure.